Hi, everybody. I am Jen Baker, and I am the district behaviorist here in Benicia Unified School District. And this is our weekly quick tips session. And today we'll be talking about how to give choices to help with problem behavior. And if you're a skeptic, hang in there, because there is a way to give choices in ways that actually do work. I know this is something we hear about a lot, and if you've tried this and it hasn't worked for you, stick around and we'll see if you get some new information here today. So it looks like right now I am the only one here live, but we may have some other parents stop in and join us, as they often do, but we're going to go ahead and get started. So I always start with this quote. This was said by Dr. Emily W. King. Back in the spring, when this whole craziness with the shutdown started and parents started to having to wear many hats, like you didn't wear enough hats before, but working, parenting, and teaching are three different jobs that cannot be done at the same time. It's not hard because you're doing it wrong. It's hard because it's too much. So do the best you can. And when you have to pick, because at some point you will, choose connection. So acknowledgements for today, these are just some of the websites that I went to. There are some, I'm learning by doing these quick tip sessions, there's a lot of really great resources out there. So I pulled from a couple of LCSWs, licensed clinical social workers, behaviorists, a behavioral company, a school psychologist, and got some really good tips here that I hope will be helpful for you. The expectations for today, we don't have anyone here live, so really the only one that I really emphasize each week is to be responsible, which in this context means to take what works for your family and leave the rest. Everything that I talk about does come from, it has an evidence base, meaning that it's been tested and it works. So I'm not just making things up. These are strategies that have been shown to be effective for a lot of parents and for a lot of students or kids, but nothing works for everybody. So if it's not a fit, it's not a fit. Take what works and leave the rest, and come back next week. Hopefully you hear something that'll be helpful. So what we're going to talk about today, I showed a video last week. I'm going to show it again. It's only a couple of minutes, but it talks about the ABCs of behavior, which are really important when we're talking about problem behavior and understanding problem behavior and why it happens. Then we're going to talk about antecedent interventions. And then we're going to go into the antecedent intervention of the day, which is giving choices. And we're going to talk about rules so that you can use this at home effectively. But the first thing that we'll start with is this 2-minute video that explains the basics about understanding behavior.
Hi, my name is Tanya, and I'm going to talk to you about the ABCs of behavior. When children act out, sometimes parents react irrationally because they're so wrapped up in the moment. Understanding this concept will change the way you work with your child for the better. The ABCs of behavior provides more opportunities to correct negative behaviors and actually prevent them from happening in the first place. The ABCs of behavior are simple. It's an acronym to help you remember it. A stands for antecedent, B stands for behavior, and C stands for consequence. Antecedent is considered what happened before the inappropriate behavior. What happened 5 minutes before the behavior? What happened 10 minutes before the behavior? What happened earlier that day? When you understand what triggers a child's behavior, it can help you address it. Behavior is what your child does that is inappropriate. Did they hit their brother or roll their eyes? When you talk about behavior, it's important you use the skill of observe and describe from the Smarter Parenting website to describe what you saw. For example, if they hit their brother, you say, "You hit your brother in the arm." The consequence of the behavior is evaluating what happened after the behavior. This includes good and bad things that may have happened as a result of the behavior. When a parent is able to recognize the ABCs of behavior, they can address the different issues they are dealing with in different areas and at different times, rather than just dealing with the negative behaviors when they happen. For example, let's take tantruming behavior. Most parents know what will cause the tantrum behavior in their child, whether it's telling your child to clean their room, stop playing video games, to do their homework, or just saying no to something they really want. Really, tantrums could stem from anything. Parents can use this knowledge to address future negative behaviors using the skill of preventive teaching to help prepare their child. considering what happens before an inappropriate behavior is the antecedent of the ABCs of behavior. When a child is throwing a tantrum, you can use the skill of correcting behaviors, which is part of the behavior section of the ABCs, to explain what they are doing while telling them what they need to do instead. After the tantrum, you can use the skill of effective consequences in decision-making. Instead of just reacting to the behaviors, you now have different options, and this makes your job as a parent a lot more flexible and easier. Remembering the ABCs of behavior will help you evaluate the best way to help your child improve. Our website, smarterparenting.com, has everything you need to help you in this process, from games and activities to worksheets and handouts.
All right, so that was the ABCs of behavior, and why that's important is because we need to look for patterns in our children's behavior. And if we understand when and why the behaviors are happening, then we can do a lot more prevention. And giving choices is one of the most basic preventative strategies. So when it comes to prevention, I found this old quote, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. It's an American idiom. It's used to say that it's better and easier to stop a problem, illness, etc., from happening than to try and stop it or correct it after it's started. So that's exactly what we're talking about here today. When we talk about antecedent strategies, the A in the ABC, we're talking about preventative strategies that we implement before a problem behavior occurs, with the whole goal of a lot of times preventing the behavior from happening in the first place. So there's many strategies that you can do to help your children increase the likelihood that they engage in more good behavior than bad behavior. Whether your child has a formal diagnosis or not, with antecedent strategies, we focus on proactively modifying the environment to remove elements that may increase or trigger problem behavior. And like I said, it's likely to improve overall behavior. Now, it doesn't mean that it's going to prevent all of the problems. So of course, we have strategies for what to do during and after a problem behavior happens. And there's some information on that on the Parent Webpage. And we've also done 2 sessions, 2 of the quick tip sessions, where we talked about positive discipline. And we also talked about how to effectively correct behavior. And we talked about how to set limits that work. So check out quick tips sessions 6 and 7 if you want to hear more about that. But now we're going to talk more about preempting versus reacting to problem behavior. So by preventing problem behavior, we get better behavior overall. Being proactive has some obvious benefits. It gives us more time to connect and play games and enjoy one another's company. We can focus more on teaching and reinforcing pro-social behavior, which leads to longer term change and behaviors that are sustained, rather than just reacting and putting out fires in the moment and always responding to problem behaviors. And this is a real big thing, now more than ever, when parents and everybody are under so much stress with so many demands and having the kids home all the time. You will feel better at the end of the day and less stressed out when you're not trying to put out fires all day long. You'll just simply feel better at the end of the day by using some of these preventative strategies. So, increasing cooperation is a priority for a lot of us in school and at home. Delaying or refusing to follow directions is one of the most common behavior problems reported by parents. So giving choices is just one of the many preventative strategies that can help prevent non-compliance or not following directions. So last week we talked about how to give effective directions. There's a quick tip session on that too. If you want to watch the video, that's another great preventative strategy. Next week, we're going to be talking about even other preventative strategies, but today we're going to talk about one of the basics, which is how to give choices. And it seems like, how could this little trick actually work so effectively? So we'll talk more about it, but by giving a choice, it may seem like a really simple gesture, but in the big picture, it really does help eliminate unnecessary confrontation. So it makes, when your child feels like they have a say in the choice that they're making, it helps them manage their frustration better during those times when there's not a choice. Because sorry, not everything in life is a choice, particularly when you're a kid. You don't get to choose if you're going to go to sleep or not, or if you're going to eat your vegetables or not. Some things aren't a choice. So when we do give choices at times that we can, it makes the kid more likely to follow our direction during those times where we just have to give them a direction, not give them a choice. So let's talk more about that. So how to give choices in ways that work. So you may be a skeptic, because this is often the first thing that people say that they've done. But there's a way to do it in a way that works. So it can be very helpful, but if it hasn't worked for you, listen to these 5 rules and make sure that you're doing these. So we're going to talk about each one of these in detail, and I'll give you some examples, but basically they are: 1, give reasons; 2, include parameters; 3, get creative; 4, pause; and 5, follow through. So let's talk about rule number 1, give reasons. So if you've ever had a boss or a spouse just tell you to do something without an explanation, that can be triggering for a lot of us. When we give reasons for why we're asking or telling someone to do something, it's a way of modeling respect. Things like, this is what I heard often growing up, but because I said so just breeds frustration. And for a lot of kids, more problem behavior. And it's not that you need to explain yourself. It's not that you're having to justify anything. You don't. You are the parent, and what you say goes. However, by modeling respect and giving the reason, it just changes the whole tone of what's going on. A more we're in it together tone, rather than like the you have to tone. So maybe your child should know why you're asking to do it, them to do something, particularly when you've told them a million times, but you wouldn't believe how just throwing in a quick reason can really, really help. So an example of this would be, I need you to take a shower because keeping clean and taking care of ourselves is important. Okay, so it doesn't have to be really long. It's still a sentence. But a non-example of giving a reason would be get in the shower or take a shower, you smell. Okay, that's just a shaming statement. That doesn't do any good. So giving a reason can really help. So that's our first rule. Our second rule, this is really, they're all important, but this is really important. Set parameters. Choices is not about being permissive. It's not about letting your kid walk all over you. This isn't free range parenting. Kids need limits, and kids actually feel safer and do better when they have limits. Okay. So with parameters, remember that you are the authority and you set the limits. Kids behave better. Okay. And when you give choices, it's not like you're giving a choice to do it or not. You're giving a choice of 2 things that are palatable to you. So an example would be, if you need your kid inside the house, you know, it's getting dark or whatever, you need them inside in 20 minutes. You don't give them the choice to say, stay out later than that, because that's not safe. But you can tell them, hey, you can either come inside in 10 minutes or 20 minutes. Like, how much more time do you want? Okay, duh. Of course, they're going to say 20 minutes, which is fine, because that still sets the parameters of what you think is safe and acceptable, which was 20 minutes to start with. But instead of just telling them, you're giving them a choice. Similarly, if you need your kid to eat their fruit or eat their vegetable, the choice isn't to have it. It's not candy or fruit. It can be, do you want an apple or an orange? Okay. Or do you want carrots or peas or things like that? And we're going to talk now more about some more creative ways to give choices. So only give choices that are palatable to you. Give choices within your parameters. So rule number 3, get creative. So the more ways that you can find to give your child choices, the more you give them a sense of control. the more he gets to feel in control of himself rather than being controlled, in general, you're going to get better behavior. Now, if there are frequently occurring problematic situations, I don't know how you all are, but I do a lot better not trying to think on my feet in the moment. And particularly if you're trying to implement this new skill, giving choices does come a lot more naturally to where they just kind of come. But if you have current, like really emotional or routines or situations that often cause problems, I find that it's helpful to brainstorm possible choices or things to say before the situation. I mean, if it's happened a million times, it's probably going to happen again. So for example, bath time, bedtime, getting ready for Zoom in the morning, whatever it is, it does get easier with practice, but especially when you're new at it, think of some of the ideas ahead of time. It makes it a lot easier. So here's an example. So you have a non-negotiable rule, eat your vegetables at dinner. So you're not going to say, do you want potato chips or vegetables, because potato chips are not a vegetable. Instead, you could say, do you want carrots or lettuce? Do you want Italian or blue cheese on dressing on your salad? Do you want your carrots chopped or grated? Do you want them on a plate or a bowl? Do you want me to put them on your plate, or do you want to serve yourself? So these are all ways that, bottom line is, you're going to eat your vegetables, but there's all these ways that you can get creative so that they can give their input and their preference on what they want. So the next one, rule number 4, and we talked about this last week, because this is a rule that we use with a lot of our strategies. We use it with giving effective directions, that we give a direction and then we make sure to pause and give some think time. It's the same thing when you give a choice, okay? After giving an instruction to your child, wait for a full 3 to 5 seconds to allow their brain to process and apply the information. I even read on one of the websites, they recommended 10 seconds. I think that's kind of long, but again, you know, this isn't the hard and fast. The hard and fast rule is to pause, but exactly how long you pause, you know your child best. So there is a lot of research that shows that kids are much more likely to follow directions if you give them a wait time or a hearty pause after you speak. So they still may not follow directions after that pause. So at that point, it's okay to then repeat yourself. What you don't want to do is be firing and saying it again and again without giving them a chance to even process or make a decision or a choice. However, if you do wait the full 3, 5, 10 seconds and they still haven't made a choice and followed the direction, at that point, it's totally appropriate to set a limit. So we're going to talk now about rule number 5, which is, oh my gosh, I just looked, it's missing. Oh no, we don't have the follow through. So one of the slides is missing, so I'll just talk about it verbally. But rule number 5 is following through. You absolutely have to follow through once you've given a choice. And at that point, it may be appropriate to set a limit. As I said, we did, I think it's quick tips session 6, where we did a whole session on how to effectively set limits. So you do need to follow through. You don't give a choice and then let them not choose. I've had some kids say like that they don't want to choose or they'll refuse to choose. Setting a limit might be, you need to make a choice or I'll choose for you. Think about what you want to do, and then you give that wait time. But you absolutely have to follow through on what you say. Otherwise, we're just teaching them that what we say isn't that important. So you absolutely have to follow through after, and that is rule number 5. All right, so now we're going to give just a whole bunch of examples of giving choices. So do you want to clean your room on your own or with my help? So there's no choice about cleaning your room, but you can do it by yourself or I can help you. It's time for homework. Do you want to do math or reading first? Do you want help or you want to do it by yourself? The doctor says you have to have a shot. Do you want it in the right arm or the left arm? Do you want to go to bed now or in 5 minutes? And again, this is like coming in from outside. You know they're going to say 5 minutes. They're not ever going to say now, probably. So then you say 5 minutes. Okay, then we have an agreement in 5 minutes that you'll go to bed no matter what. Okay, I'll be back in 5 minutes. And then again, remember rule number 5, you do need to come back and make sure they actually go to bed. We don't give a choice and then just let them not choose. And I added this in because a lot of parents are struggling with this at home with academics and the increased academics at home and Zoom sessions. When it comes to schoolwork or chores that are frequently a problem, again, it's not a choice to do it or not, but sometimes giving a choice of when they do it, or if there's like a bunch of things to do, in what order they do it, or even where they do it, that can be immensely helpful. All right, so why do choices work? So like we talked about before, kids have to do a lot. And especially right now, they're going to school, but it's online, which for a lot of them isn't all that fun. They have homework, they have to clean up after themselves. I mean, there's a lot, we all have a lot to do. But choices actually allow the kids to make decisions about the activity of their day-to-day life, rather than having to just follow directions all the time. I mean, you do need to follow directions a lot of the time because you're a kid, but it's nice to empower kids and make them feel like they have some control over their own destiny. So that's why it works. Like, it's a win-win situation here, because you're only offering choices that are okay with you, so you're happy, and your kid feels like they're having their preferences respected, so they're happy. So a lot of the times it's a great solution for everybody. Yeah, I think that's all I want to say about that. So let's go on to the next one. So again, more on this. No one likes to be forced to do things, even kids, and we're more likely to be open to it and be cooperative when we have some choice. We're not making them do something, they're choosing to do something, and they feel in charge. But again, no free range parenting, it's within your parameters. So it's a really good way to sidestep the power struggle. So I am going to go back to this slide. This was from last week. I've actually showed it a couple times because this is a good one. The cycle of coercion. This is that like back and forth that we get into sometimes with our kids that might actually make the situation worse than it was to begin with. It makes the situation bigger than it needed to be. And so basically what I'm saying is, by giving a choice, this is one of the ways that we can circumvent that power struggle. We call it, like we always say, don't pick up the rope, because and again, my little favorite cartoon here of the adult just standing there and the kid like showing the rope, like trying to get her to like bite. And she's like, I'm just not going to pick it up. She doesn't look like she's mad. She's shaking her head like, I'm not going to do it. So giving a choice is a great way to be firm without getting pulled into an emotional or a power struggle. And again, setting limits. If you want to hear more about that, that's our quick tips session number 7. This is a quote I found on one of the websites that I thought was awesome. They said, it's like parenting Aikido, which is like this martial art. So instead of meeting your child's resistance with force, which creates a power struggle and makes it a lot harder for everybody, and ultimately a more resistant, more non-compliant kid, you give them some control, but it's within the bounds you set. So as a result, you have a happier, more cooperative child who knows that you're on his side. And as a result, you're happier and calmer. They're behaving within the parameters and the choices that you set, but at the same time, we're not forcing them to behave. We're laying things out in a way that we're working together. So it helps them eliminate unnecessary confrontation. And again, when you give choices throughout the day and at all these other times, it makes it a lot easier for them to follow your direction when there's not a choice. I can't emphasize that enough. This is not about permissive parenting or let kids do whatever they want. That's not good for kids. But they will be more likely to follow a direction when you can't give them a choice, or where it's not appropriate to give a choice. That was funny. I slapped my hand. I felt really passionate about that point. So anyway, on that, we'll move to wrapping up. So in summary, giving choices is one of our basic preventative strategies. It's a fabulous way to minimize power struggles and to make your home a happier place overall. It's an antecedent strategy, so it's something that we do before there's even a problem, as opposed to a reactive strategy, which is something we're doing to try and stop or clean up a problem once it's happened. Being proactive gives us more time to connect and play and enjoy one another. And again, you will feel better, I promise. At the end of the day, if you're going through a day and using some of these strategies and focusing on teaching and reinforcing appropriate behavior, which is not easy. I'm not saying that's easy, but it feels a lot different at the end of the day than when you've been at people all day long, correcting and reacting and putting out fires. So in summary, the rules for making choices that work. If you've tried this before and it didn't work, make sure that you're doing these 5 things. Give reasons, very basic reasons. You're not justifying yourself, but give reasons. Include parameters. Get creative. Pause to give them time to process and decide. And then you follow through. So bottom line, like, again, if it's not a choice, I'm not saying give it a choice. Not everything is a choice, but if it's not a choice, this goes back to giving effective directions last week. Do not have a question mark at the end of that. Like, do you want to eat your vegetables? If it's not a question, I mean, if it's not a choice, do not have a question mark at the end of the sentence. Have a period at the end of the sentence. And if this all seems overwhelming, I get it. Parenting is super hard, and especially kids in school age and teen years, they will test you and try to outsmart you. And I know it is not easy, but giving your child rules and limits isn't going to damage them. It actually makes them stronger, and it will make your life easier in the long run. All right, so before we wrap up, I always end on this. This is the Parent Webpage that I put together. This is just a screenshot. If you do not have the link to this, my email is up there. It is jenbaker@beniciaunified.org, and I can send you the link. This is basically a living, breathing webpage. It is organized in columns. So I have different resources on there about, reward systems, or how to set limits, or all kinds of things, how to do a behavior contract. I have it organized in columns. You can scroll right to left or up and down. And there's little videos, there's PDFs, there's handouts to read. So it's a great place to start if you're looking for some ideas. But I like to tell parents too that it can be a little overwhelming because you log in and it's so much. It is not intended that you should read it all and do everything. You look for the strategies that resonate with you, and you do one thing at a time. Don't try multiple things at once. Pick one thing at a time. And if it's not getting enough of the change you want, then you pick something else. So I will say I also offer office hours, which are a quick 30-minute consult with me. There is a flyer that's attached to this webpage. It's in the first column under Benicia Unified School District Resources, I think. But you download the flyer and then click on the link, and you can fill out a form, and then I'll send you a calendar invite for a consult with me. And that's if you've attended some of these sessions, or you've looked at this and you have questions about some of the strategies, or you need some tips about how to actually individualize it for your kids. I'd be glad to meet with you and help point you in the right direction. So I think that's about it for now. And yeah, I hope this was helpful, and I will see everybody soon. Bye for now.